Mary Trump, the author of the book, The Reckoning, Our Nation's Trauma and Finding a Way to Heal. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm eager to get your reaction to the Woodward and Costa account of Paul Ryan doing his psychiatric homework on narcissistic personality disorder during the presidential transition as he was trying to figure President-elect Donald Trump.
As is often the case, it's shocking but not surprising. One of the things that's shocking about it is that Paul Ryan was allegedly found flat-footed after the election when anybody who was paying attention, anybody with some modicum of intelligence and insight who'd met Donald for 5 minutes would have known what a deeply psychologically disordered person he was. So for Paul Ryan to have waited for Donald to be in the Oval Office before doing his homework and attempting to put up safeguards long after he actually could have done something to make a difference is, I think, a testament to how we got where we are, that the kind of fecklessness of people like Paul Ryan and Jeff Flake, who instead of taking a stand against what was clearly a dangerous and incompetent person, they just stood aside and let him ascend to power and then have left the rest of us to deal with the quite serious fallout.
It seems that Paul Ryan's personal strategy in all of this, once he saw how impossible it was to deal with this madman in the White House, was to basically track his own personal exit strategy, not just from the speakership, not just from the House of Representatives, but from politics entirely, and land as softly and as richly as he could on corporate boards like Fox News. That was apparently his route of moral responsibility that he found for himself.
Yeah, I guess he just found it too difficult to stay in the fight and try to save his party from its worst instincts, which obviously were championed by Donald. So the problem is, because potentially moderating influences, and I'm not suggesting that he ultimately would have been, but at the time, the belief was that people like Paul Ryan would be some kind of moderating influence because they chose to be cowards and get out of public life. We now understand that Donald is not the end result of how bad the Republican Party can be. He's the leading edge of it.
Mary Trump, as a psychology professional, this is a thing that has been mystifying me since the weeks after the inauguration. When Donald Trump was running for president and should have been losing, there were times when I used to just theoretically say to myself, occasionally to others, it would be so interesting to see him win the presidency, because then he would discover that Paul Ryan is more powerful than he is, that the Speaker of the House actually tells the president what is possible legislatively, and that the Senate Majority Leader is more powerful than the president is on domestic policy issues. And then I saw something I've never seen before, the collective collapse of the male ego. Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, all these Republican chairmen of powerful committees who used to love to defy presidents of their own party and other parties, just if nothing else to show how powerful they were. And in Washington, among Republican men, suddenly the male ego evaporated in the face of Donald Trump, and I've never had a satisfactory explanation of that.
Well, I think that is true in some cases. In some cases, I think it's also true that there are many elected Republicans who absolutely agree with Donald and his hateful rhetoric. And then I think people like Mitch McConnell are playing a long game. And as Representative Jeffries said earlier, he sees Donald as an opportunity to retain and cling to raw power, no matter how illegitimately he gets his hands on it. So he's willing to make certain concessions, because behind closed doors, I still think that there is nobody more powerful than Mitch McConnell.
As you see these this kind of reporting come out from Bob Woodward, Robert Costa, and you see now that people were actually thinking about your uncle in the terms that you had been thinking about him before he even became a politician, and you see Paul Ryan doing this psychiatric homework on your uncle. Did you feel you must have felt very frustrated about, at least publicly, how long it took them to catch on to just how far gone he was?
Yeah, it honestly, Lawrence, mystifies me because it's not as if Donald has a poker face, you know? He's exactly who he is. He has no private self. He's all what we call false self. He's the same in any context, in any situation. So again, if you're paying the slightest bit of attention, you know that. You know what he would be capable of doing. And as you've said before, the Republicans had so many opportunities. They had so many off-ramps to cut ties with him and to defend our country against him. And yet they never did. I mean, I'm very glad that General Milley took the steps he took. And obviously there's a lot we still don't know. But, you know, giving an anonymous interview to Bob Woodward just doesn't cut it, I'm afraid. So we have a lot of soul searching to do, and we have to ensure going forward that our institutions are safeguarded, because what Donald has shown us, not purposely, of course, is that fragile institutions bend towards the greatest dysfunction. And it turns out that our institutions and our system are very, very fragile indeed.
Mary Trump, I can never thank you enough for joining us. And I hope, as you heard Rachel and I discussing at the beginning of the hour, your perspective on your uncle, both professional and personal, is so invaluable to this country to understand what we have been through, what we continue to go through, and for historians, just cannot thank you enough, Mary Trump. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you. And coming up,